Welcome back to Dirty Pretty, the space where we own our feelings, honor our experience, share unfiltered truths, and talk shit, all through a lens of love. I'm really happy to be back and present with you again. It's been some time since we have engaged, and I'm sure you're well aware. However, there has been good reason for my absence, and my absence has been in the choice of incubation and containment. As I shared with you, I went to the Energetics of Business Summit in San Diego in February, and I was honored to be asked to be a speaker. And while at the event, I was very excited to be there. It was my very best friend is hosting, one of my very best friends is hosting the event, Erin Nicole Porter. Check her out on Instagram and all the major sites so you can find when you can book tickets for 2026 Energetics of Business because you will not want to miss it. The amount of energy, of promise and possibility and potential and ambition and conviction really was the most profound energy in the room. And from the minute I sat down, I felt invited and included and in relationship with all of the people that were in this space. And I didn't share too much with you about that experience for me after it happened because after it happened, I experienced the shift that caused me to shut everything down and to go into incubation. Long and short of it is, I have been working on myself very intently for the past 10 years, very consciously, I would say, for the past 3 to 5. I think I've shared that with you before. But coming back into the space as a coach and having something meaningful to contribute after my dad passed away was something I really had to work up to because I really wasn't sure what this whole life thing was about. In full disclosure, my universe was really fractured and wobbled after my dad passed away. And to me, that makes complete sense. To anybody that experiences a very deep seated grief because there was a very deep, honest love in that connection, I think we need to be able to give ourselves that. We need to be able to say, I loved very deeply, and so I am in much sorrow because of it. And I'm different because of it. And it took me some time to really see that, to get some elevation on my life, to not be so sucked into the experience of losing a parental figure. It's tough. There's a lot involved in relationships that are very involved, right? There's so much memory, there's so much co-regulation. There's so much of you tied into them and them tied into you. And so when you have somebody that, is literally your insides, like DNA, like my dad is, or even just you love and have such a deep connection, it feels like they're a part of your DNA in that way. When you have them ripped from your universe, it is not a completely ridiculous response for you to feel wrecked. It's not ridiculous for you to say, my life has changed completely the way that I know it. Now I need to calibrate to consider that. And it took me probably about a year and a half to 2 years to really digest that, and another year to digest how that impacts who I am as a person. And of course, whatever impacts me impacts what I do because I'm an entrepreneur, but all of us, right? However we are impacted impacts the way that we show up in the world. Why? Because we are the beginning of every relationship. You are the beginning of every resonance and every connection that you have. And so what do I mean by that? Well, this is where the Brave framework began. As I sat down and started thinking about what I wanted to present and what I wanted to offer and what I wanted to share and what I wanted to insert into conversation at the Energetics of Business, this is what came up, is the realization that, yes, my world has been completely turned upside down. And this is not a recalibration. I'm not recalibrating to the world as I know it. I'm calibrating to a whole different world, a world without my father in it, a world without that sense of stability that he brought me and gave to me as his child, as my protector in it. And so it wasn't something that I was familiar with, right? So often when we talk about self-growth and self-development, the narrative is like there's a coming home, there's a rebirth, there's a reclamation, there's a return. And I was just really butting up against the edge with that concept and context. And this is where I want to caveat this very clearly. I am not naming rebirth, coming home, becomings, returns, reclamations, recalibrations is wrong. If that is what you subscribe to and that is what brings you resonance and that what stabilizes you in your own evolution, choose that. that resonates with you. You don't need to use my lexicon. You don't need to use anybody else's lexicon. And that was fucking my shit up royally. I had fleshed out an idea of what I thought I wanted to say at the Energetics of Business, but about, I know it's a vast gap, but was just the way that my life was processing at the time. It's like between 2 and 6 weeks before the event came up, I started having all of these rumblings in my idea of inauthenticity and misalignment, not because it was, pretense or, performance in any way, but because I had already outgrown that concept. So for me to speak on it and to deliver it and to share on it was not going to be in integrity with how I was already growing prior to the summit. So what I showed up with and I spoke with at the summit was actually the beginning of the Braid framework. It was this concept that I was butting up against with I'm not new here. I'm me evolved, right? My universe is not the same, but I am not a different person. I am different because of the circumstance and its shifts and its changes. So I was relating to me prior to my dad passed, during the grief of him passing, and now afterwards in a new way. Because how I related to myself while it was going on was now becoming different than how I was relating to myself after it all had transpired. And now I'm left with it to live with it. And so I decided that I wanted to introduce those concepts at the summit. And it was a very big risk because number one, it was new for me. And number two, it was new for me to share these concepts that I had for a long time, most of my life, been percolating on and considering, and really didn't have any sense of fortitude and conviction with which to stand on to present these thoughts. And so what started as me sharing how I got from this wreckage point where I was broken down in a breakdown around my life and shifting real time while not feeling like I had the capacity to do so. I wanted to share that, right? Because I think that what we often talk about is shifting while having the capacity to do so, shifting while making the choice to change. But what happens when you don't make that fucking choice? And that the universe makes it for you. And now you are thrusted forward into change without anybody even asking you if you fucking wanted it or if you could hold it. And what I realized is, yes, the passing of my father is devastating and it will continue to be devastating. Every memory that I make and every new thing that I do without him hurts. But at the same time, that hurt jolts me back into presence of the reminder of what my dad doesn't get to do. He doesn't get to be here to have this moment. And so I get to have that grief with the gratitude at the same time. And that's what I brought into the Energetics of Business Summit. I brought the concept of embracing change before we believe we have the capacity to, understanding that sometimes what allows us to be most stable is allowing ourselves to be in the rhythm with what we're realizing and resonant with it as how we're rooting in it, even though it can feel destabilizing, right? Resonating with ourselves that this feels fucking crazy allows us to be in rhythm with it instead of resist it. Because what happens when resistance meet resistance? No movement. Pushing against each other. But when resistance meets rhythm, there's an opportunity to find where you can flow and get into a flow state with what you feel like you're resisting. Not to bypass it, but to come to presence with it, to meet it face on and say, I see you, this anxiousness, this trepidation, this stagnation. I see you. What are you? I need to relate with you because there's an engagement that's happening between me and you that is making me feel stuck. It's making me feel like I don't have any creativity. It's making me feel like I can't make decisions. It's making me feel like I don't know who I am. And that is how I have felt most of my life. And it's really challenging to present a narrative that doesn't match what you have performed for everyone. When you're a people pleaser and you have a history with compounded trauma and you choose self-dissolve as a form of protection, you choose to go against yourself as a way to protect any potential outcomes that may be unfavorable. You choose to follow, you choose to do what's appeasing, not because you want to be that way, not because you want to be a liar, not because you want to be a faker, not because you want to mislead anybody, but because that is the only way you know how to be safe. And when you come from a life of doing that, embracing resistance is not what you're familiar with. Why? Because when we people please, often when we meet the resistant that if you don't people please, you could face something that could destabilize your safety, we learn how to shut down. We learn how to meet resistance with resolve. We learn how to say, you win. I don't want to deal with this contention. I don't even want to deal with the potential of contention. So before anything even happens, I will shut myself down. I will make myself small. I will sign out. I will curb my truths. I will perform. I will be a lesser version of what is true and fully expressed for me. And as I was writing this for the energetics of business at the time, I had only had what I would call three modalities or three tiers of what I would call the Braid framework developed. I had presence, values, and emotional regulation. So I went to the Energetics of Business Summit and I did my whole spiel. I had a lot of great feedback. I had a lot of great inquiries. I made a lot of great connections because of that as well. But when I came home, there was a whole lot of integration that needed to happen because this was my first time ever speaking publicly with truths that I have withheld and dissolved for most of my life. And the reception that I got as a, someone who is prone to people please was great, but also wasn't something that I knew how to handle. And not in the sense that I haven't received fanfare before, I have, but in ways that allowed me to be performative. When you're a thespian, like I have been since I'm 5 years old, a singer, a dancer, an actor, a gymnast, a musician, you're going and you're performing something. You're performing a sheet of music, you're reciting a dialogue, you're dancing, you're reflecting an energy that's within you. And while that is not dishonest, it is not the same as sharing your personal, deepest thoughts that you have never shared before. At least it wasn't for me, because every time I showed up as a thespian, I got to be a version of, not a whole me, a version of me. So when I was checking in to dance, it was, this is the dancer in me. It wasn't, how does this nurture and nourish every aspect of me by showing up fully for this dance. When I showed up for a performance and was acting, I was honoring that role. I was honoring the story of that role. And that is what I learned how to do. Honor the story, not honor me. Honor whatever outcome I was looking to curate and manufacture and produce and control, not honor a whole me. So when I came home and I had this reception in my back pocket and all this energy of it, I needed time to integrate. And so I did something that made me completely uncomfortable. I pulled my business down yet again. And it really is jarring for somebody who knows that their inconsistencies aren't always received well, by community at large, to continue to perform in ways that not only condone inconsistency, but continue to do it. And there was a lot going through my mind at the time around how is this going to look? I'm pulling my business down again. People are going to think I'm so flighty. And I really needed to go through that. I needed to go through that so that I could get to the next module of the framework, which was perspective shifting. And once I got through perspective shifting and was able to see how I was performing and how the perspective that I was holding about life was coloring the way that I viewed it and the way I ingested it and the way I engaged with it, I was then able to get to the next rung, which was romancing reality and coming to terms with the fact that I am a lover and I want to be loved for who I am. I want to love people for who they are. And I want to be in relationship with that. I want to be in relationship with that even when I don't like something. I want to be able to say, I like that you do. Even if something doesn't have relevancy to me, I want to say that doesn't really ring true for me, but I respect that it is relevant for you. And once I started to flesh out all of these different support systems, the guides that support the Braid framework, then I needed to understand what the framework itself was about. And as I started to go through that process and allow the unveiling to be what it is, learn again how to practice serving not the story that the Braid framework could sell, but the reality of what it offers as far as resonance is concerned, I came to a realization of where this all came from. And this is what the Braid framework does. And I will do a larger podcast on this in the future. I want to keep this one as succinct as possible with my first coming back in a while. But what it came back to was a memory that I had. And the memory is more than a memory. It was one of those moments that you're in where you can feel your entire body vibrate, radiate. You got goosebumps. Something hits with you. Something is meaningful to you. Something opened up a doorway in your brain. Something opened up access in your heart. Have you ever had that moment where something jolted you with such awareness and validity that it made you feel like you knew yourself better? Like you learned more of who you were through an experience, through an engagement, through an encounter. And this experience for me was I was about 25 years old. I was working for the broker of Major League Baseball and I was at spring training. And so one of my role responsibilities was every year I had to go to spring training and I had to do the benefit enrollment presentation. I had to walk through what our company did and I had to do it before people that were probably 2 times my age, definitely much more affluent than I was at the time, and just had a power dynamic, right? These are very successful people, and that's just the way that I looked at it at the time, right? It was a privilege to be in the room, honest to goodness, particularly at my age, and I loved my fucking job so much. And this woman who was the HR generalist of the commissioner's office at the time, I don't know if they're still in employment there. We just gelled. They were from the Northeast. I'm from the Northeast. Everything, the way that she carried herself, I related to. It reminded me of my grandma and my mom and my aunt and my cousins who are very direct, very loving, very capable, very smart, very self-aware and self-sufficient women. And that's not something that I have encountered a lot in my life. Women that are like the women in my family, that are like my friends. And so when I was in a corporate space and I was encountering it very flagrantly and very confidently, it gave me the goosebumps. And what happened was in the meeting that we were having, it was a huge roundtable discussion. All the clubs are there. The representatives from each organization is there, sometimes 2 or 3 people. And it can get pretty heated because not only is it a benefits discussion, an insurance discussion, but it's also a financial discussion. So there's a lot of things that can cause heated, passionate opinions to come to the surface. And as I mentioned, the HR generalist being a very strong, self-assured woman, somebody was getting mouthy with them. And in the face of this individual being talked to in a way that I would describe as belligerently and intensely, this is how she sat, just like this. Her demeanor didn't change. She didn't pursue a posture of retaliation. She just stayed cool, calm, collected, unbothered, unwobbled. And I watched her. I watched her let this person spew venom and vitriol in her direction and her just be cool as a motherfucking cucumber. And something happened in me. My whole body got warm. I felt a tingly sensation come over. And only after I finished the modalities or the guides of the framework did this memory come to me, as I shared with you, while I was trying to understand what is this framework about. Yeah, it has these guides that support presence and alignment and regulation and shifting, changing, and romancing reality. It has all of these important modalities that I think are supportive for an individual being able to self-regulate and being able to be in rhythm with anything that feels contentious or confronting, while also finding a way to root and ground as well with their resonance, came forward to me as this is where it started. 25 years old, I experienced someone performing sovereignty in a way that spoke to me that took almost 20 years to integrate and self-actualize as not something that I admired, but something that resonated with me so much that from that moment on, I can now look back and see the course of my life shifting from that moment forward. Not because I wanted to be like her, but because I already am. I am strong. I am assertive. I am tender. I am soft. I am fiercely loving and fiercely loyal. I am cerebral. I am spiritual. I am energetic. I am substantial. I am all the things that I saw this person performing that I not only resonated with, but I preferred. And so as I sat down and I really started to decipher, okay, what is the framework about? It's a myriad of things. Yes, it's being convicted. Yes, it is owning your space. Yes, it is filling out and claiming who you are going to be, irrespective of what the world at large is doing. But it is far greater than that. It's not who are we going to be inside of a story. It's not how do I want to perform or look or come across. It is who am I? Because how I relate to me is the reflection of how I relate to everything else. And once I got that, once the resonance of what the rationale was behind the Braid framework became clear for me, I was then able to draw back to that example I had of the HR generalist, and I was able to see that what happened there wasn't me fawning over her and aspiring to be like her. It was resonance. It was me realizing that that is who I am. I just wasn't there yet. I didn't know how to allow her to be real. I didn't know how to allow her to take up that space that says, "Oh, you seem real bothered," but I'm not. Because I have exercised that throughout my life. It's why I got the job working for the broker of Major League Baseball at 25, because when I step into something, I am all the way in it. My mother-in-law pointed that out to me a few years ago, thanks to her. Shannon, you are an eat the whole elephant girl. And I wasn't sure how to take that, but now I do. And I am, and I understand it because I never wanted to relate to being able to not be wobbled. I wanted it to be real because it was real within me, and not because pieces or parts of myself resonate with that. My whole fucking self resonates with being unwobbled, relational, and reciprocal and respectful in that way. But it wasn't because I just knew that about me. It was because in community, I learned it by witnessing it alive in someone else. Not that I'm stealing it from her, not that I'm taking that personality trait from her, but because I resonated with how she stimulated me by the way that she held her presence. And this is what the Braid framework is. It's not a coming home. It's not a becoming. It's not a return. It's not a recalibration. It's a filling out and taking up all of your space, all the way up to the edges of your energy field that lives outside of you, filling out, no longer being in the mindset of this is how much of my personality I actually showed to the world, but this is how big it actually is. No, it's being in the bigness. It's filling out. It is calibrating to the awareness of what is real for you in every single moment and every single choice you make. Calibrating to what is consciously congruent. Consciously being checking in with all facets, pieces, parts, and aspects of yourself to understand what is most consciously congruent or most regulating and aligning for you. Understanding that sometimes our hearts are going to tell us this is the way, but our minds and our bodies and our nervous systems and our energies will be shut the fuck down because they're going, that's only good for one side of you. What about the whole? And that's what the Braid framework brings into view. It brings into reality what's real for you, of course, but what's resonant for you and why, so that you can move with conviction, so that you can not only choose presently and consciously what is most aligned in this moment, in this choice, but because you choose most aligned in this moment, you are then set up to choose most aligned in the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and so on and so forth. So I am happy to be back doing the dirty pretty with you because this is the dirty pretty. The Braid framework is the dirty pretty. It is looking at the pieces and parts of ourselves and saying, this feels a little bit funky, but this feels aligned. How can I find resonance and rhythm to root and respond from what is most real? How can I say, I don't have 100% certainty, but when do I ever? So maybe I don't feel 100% sure about this, but feel about 80%. I feel like I can do it. I don't feel stuck doing it. I don't feel intimidated doing it. I don't feel like it's a performance doing it. I feel like it's honest. And maybe it's scary because it's unfamiliar. Maybe it's scary because not doing it is unfamiliar, but the way that I'm doing it as the person I am now, fully convicted, is. So I'm so happy to be back here and having this conversation with you because I believe dirty pretty is everywhere in life. I believe all aspects and all pieces and parts of us deserve attention and validity. And I believe that all of them have something important to offer us in allowing us to find right relationship, to respond in ways that are rooted for us, so that if something does wobble us, we know I made that choice from the most rooted place I possibly could have made it from. I can make a choice to be in this wobble and how to relate to myself and find a rhythm so that I can root in it too. Thank you as always for being here. If any piece or part of this resonates or relates with you, please let me know what it is. And if you think it might resonate or relate with someone else, please feel free to share it with them too. If you have any questions about the Braid framework, please go to lifewithshannon.com. I've completely updated my website. I have tried to offer every piece of insight possible around the Braid framework, not because I'm looking to be over explanatory, but because my project manager and my structural systemic mind says I would rather give you more insight to make a conscious choice than not enough. And if anything about that is confusing for you, then the very first step of agency and sovereignty I empower you to make is to ask about what you're curious about and to get answers that make sense to you and to not move until you feel rooted well enough to do so. This is your right. This is your resonance. And I'm so excited to continue to walk with you in your root rhythm. Be good to yourself for fuck's sake. Live honestly in the dirty pretty of your life. And as always, choose to do the next right thing for you. Until next time.